Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of He Said, a look at the world from a seasoned Black man perspective. I'm Alvin King, and welcome to the show tonight. Um, we have been anticipating this show for a long time, so I'm so glad that all of you are here and are joining us tonight, and we can't wait to get to it. Our show tonight is Financially Fit. Originally, actually, we were going to do Financially Fit over 50, but we realized this applies to a lot of people, and you don't have to be over 50 to learn how to take care of your money. But before we get started, I want to bring on my co-host tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Let them.
Hey everybody. Hey Alvin, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, but you know what? I mean, believe it or not, my light, I need my light. My light just said, you know what? We're not playing with you tonight. And so my light went out. So I don't have that sparkle or that halo that I have, but hopefully she will come back after she dims down. But anyway, hello guys. How you guys doing?
Hey Alvin, hey Vash.
Hey Saladin. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. It's an honor.
As everyone can see, we have a new face joining us tonight. This is Saladin Deir. He's our guest correspondent, and he's actually filling in for Jacques, who tonight is on assignment in LA, and he couldn't be with us, but we are so glad that Saladin was available, and you are here, and we do appreciate it, as Vash just said. How you guys doing tonight once again?
Very well.
I see that we have some folks that have come on, and I just want to, give a shout out to them. Keith Branch and Linnell Johnson, they have come on. And so how you guys doing? Hopefully you guys have had a great week. Thanks for joining us tonight. Guys, I got a question that I want to ask you all, because I know some of us, they're starting to loosen up these restrictions for COVID, and people can now go out, and, they're getting a little comfortable. And there's like an issue, and if I sound insensitive to anybody, I'm sorry, but this is just how I feel. Mayor Bowser is getting a lot of criticism from people in Washington, D.C., because she said that you can have a wedding, but people can't dance at their wedding. And I don't know about them, but it was just a year ago that when you had a wedding, people were dying and getting COVID and dying from the weddings. I just don't see where all the hoopla is coming from if it's not coming from a place of insensitivity, as far as I'm concerned. You know what happens when people dance at weddings. They get drunk, they touch, they do all kinds of things. So I'm not sure of what the problems of what I'm not sure why this is making the news, is what I'm saying. So I need you all to help me out with that.
Wow. Well, why it's making the news is a completely different question, because that's all about ratings and hyping things up. But not having people dance at weddings, first of all, to be able to have people at weddings is a big step in terms of where we've been over the last, year and a half?
Right.
I don't understand why not being able to allow people to dance at weddings is going to be that much of a step from having them be close to one another. I mean, if you're on the dance floor, you might be actually further apart than if you're sitting at a table with 10 other people, because, people have to pack people at tables to make weddings worthwhile and cost effective. How that's going to be that big of a difference. I'm surprised that she's allowing people to have weddings, to be honest.
Well, pre-pandemic, I went to a wedding, a very religious couple. They were getting married, and everything started right on time. And the DJ announced the bride and the groom, and they had their little dance. And then the bride danced with her father, and the groom danced with his mother. And the DJ announced, that will end the dance portion of this evening. And it was the worst wedding I've ever been to.
My check.
So if people, exactly. And from now on, when I go to a wedding, I'm actually going to take my checkbook with me, and I'll write the check out, because there's also no alcohol at that wedding. And it was the worst wedding I've ever been to. So for people who are able to have a wedding, but dancing is restricted, just don't have the wedding.
Was there
Save your
food?
money.
Did they serve food?
There was food and Coca-Cola, yes.
That's hilarious. First of all, bring back the flask. You should be traveling with your own flask.
Okay.
True.
Secondly, if everyone has their own iPod, you can broadcast something or have everyone tune into the dance station of the day and keep it going.
Exactly.
But wow, that must have been crazy, no dancing.
It was disappointing, especially considering how much money we gave them as a wedding gift.
Wow.
Well, and I'm just gonna, in my opinion, for me, I'm gonna bring this to a close because I had a cousin and he and his wife were prepared to spend thousands of dollars on a wedding. Okay. I mean, I know I was a part of it because they wanted a steel band. And so for me to have to go and research a steel band for the wedding, and then they canceled everything. But because they really wanted to get married, they scaled it down and with no dancing to the people who only mattered to be at the wedding, because the true point was we want to get married. It wasn't that we want to have a celebration so people can dance. We want to make sure, it wasn't that. And so to me, again, it just goes off the cuff of just being a little insensitive if you're going to complain that Mayor Bowser is restricting you from having people dance. I think there are other things that you need to worry about, in terms of the wedding.
What I don't understand is why would people complain? It's not like they're going to be police there at your wedding telling you not to dance. Like, if you want to dance. Wear a mask if you can. Yeah. Or save the money, get married over Zoom like people did last year, and then use that money at another time to have a bigger party where you can invite me, actually, because I'll come to your wedding and dance.
Or go to City Hall and get married, and the money that you would spend on the wedding, like that could be a down payment for a home, or I don't know. We'll talk more about that with Ray, but I mean, I don't know. I like going to weddings. But for certain people, it depends on what your financial situation is. It doesn't always make sense to have a big wedding when that money can be repurposed for something that's much more important.
Right. And before we get off of this, I know you want to get off of this, Alvin, but as we evolve in this whole COVID experience, I just recently traveled for the first time, and I have to say that it was really, it was strange actually to think about being out and about, being on an airplane, being with people I haven't seen. I believe that it's time for us to start making a little bit of a transition, but we have to be really smart about it.
Agreed.
I have to agree. Well, thank you guys for letting me get on my soapbox about this dancing at wedding stuff, because I just think that it's really a no-brainer. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I think we have some more people who have joined us. I think I see Monica and Rose. Is that Michelle? Yeah, I see. Thank you guys for joining us on a Friday evening. We really appreciate it. Hey, Rosalie. Hey, Monica. Well, it's time for us to get to the topic of the night, being financially fit. Our show tonight is all about becoming, learning about getting financially fit. Joining us for a really informative and in-depth discussion is someone who has spent over 20 years helping people live in the wow. Okay, now see, I like that. Something about that got me. In becoming financially fit. Welcome to the He Said platform, wealth management advisor, Mr. Randy Jones. Come on in here, Randy.
Hey, Randy.
Hey,
welcome.
Hey, Randy.
Hey, guys. How's it going? Thanks so much for having me here.
So how was that introduction? Okay, I was like, wait a minute. Okay. Thank you for being with us, Randy. So, like I said, we've been wanting to do this show for a long time, and we're glad that we're here, and we're glad that we have you. So I'm just going to, kick this show off. Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry, Randy. I don't mean to cut into this, but my sister, who never logs on, has just logged on. Carol, thank you for being here. Happy Mother's Day to you, sweetheart. Thank you. Hey, look,
Carol.
so Randy, my first question to you is if you can take about 90 seconds to tell us about yourself and why you got into the financial planning industry.
Sure. So I've helped a number of people, I guess, for the last 25, 26 years, do a number of things, from buying homes, building retirement, taking care of their kids and parents as they get older and things, starting companies, buying and selling companies. I used to run and own a mortgage company for about 17 and a half years. Now, two of my partners run that part of my business. And then I grew into financial awareness and education. So I might do 80 to 100 different presentations throughout the year. But my experience has shown me that financial planning truly isn't about money. And what I mean by that is, when I would talk to people over the years about their finances, I often see that they had multiple dollars doing one job versus $1 doing multiple jobs, and they were limited in their options and the things that they wanted to do. And so I sort of took it upon myself I said, if people could sort of answer the question, if money weren't an issue, what would they do for someone else? Because people often talk about what they wanted to do, how we wanted to change our communities and things like that, but they would always start their statement with, but the money or something like that. And so I said, well, I want to get involved, not being a part of the problem, but being a part of the solution. So what I do is I help people find the money in their life and then repurpose it for the benefit of themselves and, most importantly, their families. That's why I got involved.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
That's great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Randy, that was great.
Selfless.
Can you, this show is basically about becoming financially fit over the age of 50. And for all of the viewers here, I just want to point out that I'm not over 50. But can you tell us, Randy, what are some of the biggest challenges to becoming financially fit after the age of 50?
Probably the biggest challenge is just changing the way that you think. Here's an example. Years ago, I was a combat medic in the military and a nurse in the VA hospital. And my instructor said to her students, medicine is not designed to heal you. And I thought that was crazy. She said, medicine is designed to sustain you. And so a lot of the information that is provided to us today about creating financial freedom is not designed to create financial freedom, just financial maintenance. And so when you get to that age in your 40s and your 50s, you've had a lifetime of thinking a certain way. And I think the biggest challenge that people have when it comes to creating financial wealth or becoming financial fit isn't what to do with the money, but just the way that they think about their money. So it's not really complicated. The hardest part is just changing a lifetime of thinking a certain way in a short period of time, because a lot of people feel at 50, they only have a certain amount of time. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge that people run into, changing the way that they think.
Wow. Well, I got to say, I didn't know the Saladin was not over 50 because I was about to say, because he looks so good. Well, Randy, I have a question for you. Actually, I have multiple questions. I always have multiple questions. But for people who are over 50, do you have like any tips for how we can like restart our whole financial journey or financial world?
I think the number one thing that people typically come to me about is, Randy, how can I get out of debt? Because I want to really save money, or the money that I've saved, they'll come to me and say, I want to have that money work for me, put my money to work. And I think the biggest challenge is I would often ask people, I would tell them, you can't get out of debt if you don't save money first. And people would say, well, if I could save money, get out of debt, I could save money and then I could possibly invest, or I could do other things, buy, investment properties or whatever it is. And I think the biggest hurdle is, one, people paying attention to how they spend their money. I would often say to people, look, if I put $10 on the table and I tell you to pick up the $5, could you do it? And they say, no. I said, why not? Because it's only a $10 bill. I said, but if I put a $10 bill on the table and told you only spend $5, could you do it? And they say, yes. I said, why? Because they said they have more control. The challenge about that is, or what I would suggest to people is that people are often looking for saving money. It's almost looking for something that you can't see while you ignore what is right in front of you. So people first have to become better spenders, which the byproduct is that you become a better saver. And most people live from a budget versus a spending plan. One is reactive, but a spending plan is proactive. And so the third thing is, have a conversation about your money. I don't know how many times people would tell me, I wasn't taught about money. We didn't talk about money. And I said, well, what are you doing now? Are you starting to have conversations about money with your family and your kids? And most people still say no. So I would say, work with what you can see, focus on being proactive, and then have more conversations.
And Randy, can I just ask you, first of all, those 3 points that you just made, I've had to learn myself. So I hear you are speaking actually to me. I'm over 60. Thank you, Saladin. And I, okay.
And you look fabulous.
Oh, well, thank you so much. But one of the things that you said, and we might have to have a therapist on here for that question. Why do you think people, or yeah, I'm being general, do not like talking about their money?
It's sort of like when people talk about their credit. It's not like when you get up in the morning, you get your keys, your cell phone, and you go, oh, I left my credit report. You know, people look at money as a reflection of who they are, not how they manage it. And so a lot of times people don't want to be judged. People say, you know, they have a fear of something, but most of us have a fear of being judged. You know, typically, if you look at a family, they're going to be 1 to 2 families. If you go to a family reunion, everybody refers to them for financial or some type of higher level of advice. And they are typically the ones that struggle the most with their decisions. And I think when it comes to having conversations, you actually have to open up and say, I may not know everything. I may be doing it wrong. You know, I've been sort of figuring this out. I often would tell people, stop being so hard on yourself. We're 2, at best, 3 generations from slavery. And we're just learning how to be and accept the fact that we're free in a lot of ways that we think and the way that we approach our life. And so I think the conversations are challenging because people don't want to be judged. So they'd rather just keep the facade of that everything's fine. Everything's
also,
going well.
You talk about your money, and some of your relatives will keep coming by you and asking you for it. So that's another reason why people are being quiet. I have to point out that people are saying lots of things in these comments, and I want to make sure that everyone knows we're going to have the What Y'all Said section where we are going to definitely get to all your questions. And I'm talking Michelle, I am talking about David, I'm talking about Monica. All y'all, we see your questions. We're going to get to them. We are definitely going to get to them.
Thank you. Thank you. So, okay, getting back to being 50. Typically, when you are 50 or older, you've accumulated some wealth, but you've also accumulated lots of debt. So, Randy, based on your experience with hundreds of clients, what works and what does not work when it comes to debt elimination?
So you'll often hear people talk about, you know, the snowball effect when it comes to paying the debt, whether paying the debts that you can pay off the quickest and have some sense of satisfaction that, hey, I'm eliminating my debt, or what debts do I have the highest interest rates and things like that. But here's what people run into the problem of. The one thing that is constant in all of our lives is the unexpected. And so here's what you'll do. You'll have a credit card. Let's say that it has $3,000 as a limit, and you're dumping extra money on it because you say, hey, I hate that extra debt and I want to get rid of it so that I can start using my money and putting it to work different ways. And then something happens, like a family member calls you, just like you said, Vash, or, you know, your car breaks down, or unexpectedly we have the pandemic happen. And because you put all of your extra resources, whether it be to your debt or trying to pay down your house extra fast, but you haven't put any money aside. When life happens, what do you have to do? Because you don't have any money aside, you actually have to go back into debt. And so I think that's one of the biggest challenges with that.
Okay.
That was actually a question that I wanted to ask you, because I understand there are sort of 2 schools of thought around credit card debt. And one school of thought is, if you have credit card debt and you have savings, you really don't have any money. And then the other school of thought is, if you have credit card debt, you should, try and pay that off as soon as possible so that you no longer have the debt and you could then save that money. What are your sort of, you just spoke to it a little bit, but if you could just elaborate a little bit more as to, should you focus on paying the minimum amount of your credit card debt while building up your savings, or try to get rid of your savings so that those funds could be sort of reallocated or repurposed?
Outstanding. So if you have that, and I often will tell my clients, I say, look, the difference between wealthy people and everyday people is just the way that they think. Generational wealth is really not about money. It's just about a mindset. So I say, look, here's what we're going to do. And people are so emotionally tied to their debt. They'll say, I'll tell them, we're going to pay the minimum on our debt so that we can build up our reserves, because the only reason that we got into debt is because we didn't have reserves. And then when we get to a certain amount, and people will say, how much? Is it 3 months of my expenses, 3 months of my income? 3 to 6 months. Truly, we want to get to close to about 8 months of our reserves. And you can only do that by having a spending plan. But put all of your extra resources in your savings, and you get to a certain point where you can actually take a lump sum and then snowball the debt. then what you end up doing is having your cash flow not attack your debt, but your debt attack itself. Because when you take that lump sum and you pay off one, then you can take that payment and apply it. But the whole time that you're doing that, you're still continuing to build your reserve, because when the unexpected happens, you don't go back into debt. So I would say pay the minimum, build your reserves, take a lump sum, and then attack the debt, and then get back to saving and building your reserves. As your debt goes down, you won't need as much in reserves as well.
Yeah. So it's like, it's not a matter of if something happens, it's really a matter of when it happens, right?
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you for that. So, so we all know that money is a very important factor in everyone's life, but what are two things you think that people commonly overlook about their money?
Money. So here's the thing. We all know that if you buy a car, say you bought an $80,000 Mercedes, we know it loses value the moment that it comes off the lot, but it sure does feel good when you're riding off the lot. And so I think a lot of times people, what they have to do is we have to have a balance. Some advisors will tell you, save, and so that you'll have money for tomorrow. I think good advice is the type of advice that allows you to spend today as well as tomorrow without any type of fear, allowing you to have a balance. If we're always looking for tomorrow, you'll hear people fall back on it. Hey, you're not promised tomorrow. You got to live for today. But we can't take care of tomorrow if we don't handle today. So I would say have some type of spending plan that allows you the freedom, because life is about living. More people are focused on their money versus how should I manage in the choices that I make, or how should I manage the choices that I make when it comes to spending my money today, as well as how do I plan for tomorrow at the same time.
Right on. Because Alana sort of said something that I thought was really interesting. She said self-preservation is the first law of nature. And if you haven't taken care of your nest egg, you'll never be able to avoid this vicious cycle. And that kind of brings me to my question, which is when people talk about leaving a legacy or creating generational wealth, what is the one thing that you think that stops them from achieving this goal? And what would you recommend that people do to start?
One thing that I think that people often come to me and say they want to leave a legacy or create generational wealth, but most advisors don't tell you how. They all agree that you should. I mean, what I would tell people is that while you're young, get a good life insurance plan in place. And I would tell people, oftentimes in our 20s, we burn money. In our 30s, we lose money. In our 40s, we make money. In our 50s, we save money. In our 60s, we say, is it enough money? If we could sort of circumvent that, if you start saving earlier, if you're trying to save $1 million and you start in your 20s, you have to save less. But of course, in our 20s, I'll say, let's save 15%. In our 30s and 40s, we need to save 20%. In our 40s and 50s, we'll need to save 25%. So leaving a legacy is about how do we start early? And then also the biggest challenge that I think people, when it comes to leaving a legacy, say that you were able to save $1 million or through your retirement plans or through life insurance, telling your family members that they have a responsibility, because it's not our goal to work hard to create $1 million and just let somebody else spend it. And that's where when people start to think that, they'll shortchange that and say, well, I got to sort of live for me. You got to get yours the same way that I get mine. But start teaching your family members early. You will have a responsibility. If I leave you $1 million, your job is to grow it to 3, not to spend it.
And
that's so
Randy,
important.
I like that.
I'm sorry. Going back to creating generational wealth, I've had this conversation with friends and family members who have had children, and they just want to open up a savings account for the kid. And I've argued to say, well, why don't you open up a life insurance policy? Why don't you gift life insurance to a child? Because typically most babies are very healthy when they're born, and the life insurance premium is very cheap. It's like, maybe $100 and something a month. Can you speak to the importance of building generational wealth from that perspective, gifting life insurance to a child and how that money grows over time?
Outstanding. There's a good book called What Would the Rockefellers Do? I think you guys should, or your viewers should read it. It gives insight. Here's the thing about information. If you look for anything good, you'll find it. If you look for anything bad, you'll find it. When it comes to creating generational wealth by gifting life insurance, I'll just tell you personally, when my kids were born, I bought policies on them. And people thought that was morbid. What do you think? Your kids are going to die? I was like, no, I needed a way of being able to create generational wealth from the very beginning. Having a life insurance, and you have two types of life insurance policies. Now, there are lots of things, and people have different feelings, but you have term insurance and you have whole life insurance. One is temporary or renting it, and one you'll have it permanently or for your whole life, hence the word whole life. And so I think a person, when they're young, if they can get a good whole life policy, there are lots of types of things. When you start mixing insurance and investments together, like a policy that has investments in it, you start blending it. Just get an investment account and just get a pure insurance contract. But get a good whole life policy that you can start young and just grow on it. And it gives you the capabilities to expand on it as your income grows. And here's the thing I will tell you. For every dollar that you rent in term insurance, it protects a dollar that you earn while you're working. For every dollar that you own in whole life, it allows you to spend $2 in retirement. We have to do another session so I can explain you how that works. But I think that is the most important thing that you can do. And because if I'm going to spend $100,000 on a life insurance policy, it's going to allow me to spend $1 million that I saved for myself while I was working.
Right.
Nice.
I actually, I see that there are a lot of people on here that I happen to know who are into investing, and we see your questions, and as Vash has said, we're going to get to them. Robert, I see your questions. Michelle's, I see your questions about stocks. And I know we're going to get to that, but we're going to get to these questions with Randy, because we want to make sure that we give all of your questions full attention. So Randy, people talk about getting a will or trust, but are those simple things people can do? Let me rephrase that. Wait a minute. People talk about getting a will or a trust, but are those some simple things people can do until they get those things in place?
So are there simple or easy things that they can do without having to say, hey, I got to put a whole will trust together? Absolutely.
Exactly. Okay.
The one thing I would tell people to do is that, and I did this with my parents. One, make sure that your retirement plans, any type of investment account, has the proper beneficiaries. A lot of times people what's the difference between a will and a trust, Randy? A will just says, hey, here's what I want to have happen with what I've left behind. A trust says, here's what I want to have happen, what I left behind. But a will is publicly accessed through the courthouse. A trust is kept private. There are lots of companies that go out and they read the obituaries, and people who have wills, they start to poach them for the resources. Hey, your mom left you, $100,000, but you can't touch it for 5 years. We'll pay you $90,000 and give you access for it. And that's how a lot of wealth is, eliminated quickly. And so I would say, make sure that your beneficiaries are right on your retirement plans. Make sure that you have TOD, or transfer on death, on your parents' bank accounts. Be added on the deeds of your parents' properties. POD is paid on death for bank accounts and things like that. Those are some of the easiest things that you can do. Here's one thing that a lot of people don't think about. Make sure that you have a list of all of your passwords. We're in an electronic age, and a lot of people pass away and they can't get access to their accounts and things like that. Get power of attorneys and get, things like that in place as well, so that you don't have to go through. And if you do happen to do a trust, make sure you fund it, which means make sure that you title the assets in the name of the trust. Many people have trusts that are completed, but they're still empty because they never titled their assets. But put the beneficiaries on. That's going to be the easiest way.
Wow. That comment that you made about we living in an age where everything is connected via a password. And my friends that are listening or who know me, the people who are my beneficiaries, they have access to passwords. I have a letter. I'm kind of type A, if you will, and very anal. So I made sure that if something happened to me, especially my beneficiaries, they know how, because I trust them already, but they have to have access to those things. I have done that. So you just made me feel really good about not doing something and feeling like it's been overkill, Randy. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. That's good validation for me.
Well,
Yeah.
Randy, I didn't even think about that. Like, having my passwords in like sort of one repository where, if something happened to me, they'd be accessible to my friends and family members. So I need to get that together.
Absolutely.
It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Randy, I think that we've had so many questions in our comment section that what I'd like to do is expand our what y'all said section.
Yeah.
And before I get into that, I'd like to ask, are there 3 takeaways that people should have from the conversation that we've had so far?
Yeah. Learn to think differently about your money.
Okay.
When we get into this conversation about investments, I'm gonna probably blow your mind with it, but change the way that you think about your money. Make sure that you have conversations about it. And here's the biggest thing. Most people talk about their material assets, but we have 4 types of assets: our physical assets, our intellectual assets, our ethical or spiritual assets, and then our material assets. Our physical is our health and well-being. Our intellectual are the things that we learn and that we teach. Our ethical are our give back and pay it forward, and our material is our money. And when I ask people, if you had a choice and you could only keep 3 of these, which one would you give up? And they often say their money. But people ask for financial advice. So it is really not your money that you want to have control over. It is your life. It is the important assets in your life that you want to grow. And we need to use our money as a tool or the fuel to grow the important assets in our life. Most people spend 95% of their time focusing on their life and only 5% of their time living it. That's what you need to change.
Right on. I say live your best life.
I think that felt like a stake that just went through my earlobe and landed in my brain. Okay, thank you. Okay, I like
I
that.
almost shouted amen.
I like that. I like that. I like that. Okay.
Well, it is time for us to find out and talk about what people have been asking this entire time. Randy, are you willing to answer some questions that people have been asking?
Let's go for it.
Well, good, because there have been quite a few of them. There have been some people have been asking about the stock market. How do you feel about individual Roth accounts? Randy, Robert Blue Petty. Hey, Robert. Beatty. Robert has asked, what do you feel about individual Roth accounts?
I think Roth accounts are great accounts. You can put after-tax money in it and it grows tax-free and you access it later on in life. You're not limited at some time period where you have to take the money out. The challenge with this is say that your money, this represented 100% of your money. I often ask people, what percentage, say that it's $1 million. Better yet, I put $1 million stacked on your kitchen table. And I ask you, Vash, what percentage of this $1 million do you want me to give you some safe guaranteed growth? And what percentage do you want me to put in the market? And most people will say, I want it all to be safe. But when I look at a person's life, they have 100% of their money in the market. And so a Roth is good if you want to have some tax-free growth. It is limited as your income grows in your contribution. It is limited by its contribution according to the IRS, but then also it is 100% in the market. And most people already have money involved in the market, whether it be through their retirement plan or something else. But I think it's a good opportunity for you. It just has limitations.
Right on. So Michelle, I hope that answered part of your question as well. If not, ask us again. So Monica wants to know, what's a good age to start drawing your Social Security, even if you continue to work?
I just taught a class on Social Security. And the biggest answer on that, it depends. Because we don't know how long people will live, right?
Right.
Yes, of course. If you wait, you can gain 8% growth on that money that you would receive. But then some person said, well, what if I don't live as long? Then I would have missed out on it. So it just depends. I think the number one thing that people need to do when it comes to financial planning is they need to have a distribution plan. How do they spend their money? Most advisors tell you how to grow your money. Not a lot of them tell you how you should spend your money. And if a person breaks down based on what you've been doing over your working lifetime, here is where you should spend first, second, and third, and how much you should be able to spend. And then you can determine, does it make sense for me to take my Social Security right now or later? Because what we want to do when it comes to your retirement income is break it into 2 parts, your paychecks and your playchecks. You just need to see how much the gap is and whether or not you need to take Social Security.
Did you say playchecks, Randy?
Yes.
Did you say
And Randy, to the paycheck side of your answer, what would be a good age for someone to begin to purchase annuities? Like, I'm 43. I don't know if I'm a good candidate to start purchasing an annuity. What's like the target sort of demographic to begin purchasing annuities, so you have paycheck money in retirement?
Outstanding. Guaranteed income is the key. And a lot of times when it comes to annuity, people have good and bad things about it. And I will often say this, you know, a little bit long-winded on the answer. The number one annuity out there that everybody loves is called Social Security. You've been paying into it for your whole life. And so if you're in your mid 40s and you have some extra cash set aside that you can put into a deferred annuity, some, you know, that you can wait 10 years or 15 years before you turn on the income. And I think that would be good. A lot of times, here's what will happen. So your mid 40s is good, but definitely by the time you retire. So a person might, let's say we're in a government employee area, right? You might get out of the government with $1 million. And typically we'll take a third of it and put it in some type of investment, a third of it that will have in some type of permanent insurance, and then a third of it that will be in an annuity, so that you can have your base income needs covered, be able to take advantage of the market, as well as be able to leave a legacy. So I would say your mid 40s, definitely by the time you retire, somebody should be talking about how do we make this money last, because that's the one thing that we're running into, people living longer.
So speaking of that, Michelle Madison has told us that she just had her third grandson yesterday by her son and wife, and she's very excited. So giving you lots of love and congratulations. But that takes us to Robert's question, which is, how do we educate the kids on money and saving? Is there a great learning tool or resource that's available?
There's tons of learning tools and resources. So here's the thing. I taught my kids from elementary school on how they should spend their money.
Wow.
Now, everybody learned how to use a spending plan, but we typically forgot it the day that we got direct deposit. So what I would do is I would have a conversation early about, hey, if you get money, 25% is walk around money, 25% sits in your checking account, and 50% should go in your savings. That's how I started my kids.
Now, when I was growing up, we had allowances, or at least I had an allowance. And I was amazed at how my dad, who gave me the allowance, and my sister always came to me to borrow money. Is that a good learning tool for kids, to get an allowance as opposed to their parents buying them everything?
I think it's a good thing to get an allowance, but it should be some responsibility. I mean, we don't just get jobs and sit at our desk and they just give us paychecks. So I think, you start your kids with understanding that money has a responsibility around it.
Okay.
And so that you can sort of train them early, that they don't take it for granted. Because a lot of times people will say kids are great savers, but they're not. They just don't have any bills to pay. So when they get money from birthdays and Christmas and things like that, they put it away. But we often have our kids come out of college. Like I had one graduate today. And if you haven't had that conversation, it's like a crash course. Now you go from pocket money to somebody giving you a paycheck. And if nobody's talked to you about how you should spend it at an early age, you end up with the same situation that a lot of people end up in debt and learning late lessons.
Now, you've talked a lot about having a spending plan and play money.
Yeah.
What are some things that people often have in those categories that they could probably get rid of?
Here's the thing. When people come to me, then I help people save 20 to 25% of their gross and definitely of their net income. And people say, well, how? I've been looking for that money all my life, Randy. Most people don't see their money because they don't look at their money. I use an application. I use mint.com because it aggregates all of my transactions so I can clearly see. So think about it. If I took $20 and broke it into $10 bills, two $10 bills, said put it in this pocket and in this pocket, I said find your $20, and then you pull it out. Most people break their $20 up into pennies, nickels, dimes, quarter, and think of you threw it in your closet and you said, well, find your $20 now, and you go, and that's why sometimes when we put on our pants, you go, oh, hey, for my $7, you didn't realize you had money left in there, right? So I think when it comes to a spending plan, people don't realize, they think they can cut off their movie channels, and I'm on bare bones cell phone. That's not where you lose your money. There are 5 places that people lose their money: food, transportation, kids, family, and personal. 85% of your spending is lost there. So if you cut off your movie channel, you're just unhappy and missing all the great shows. These are the 5-finger planning events that I tell people, this is where we find all your money.
Okay. That's good to know. That is good to know. Well, thank you so much. And thank you everybody for your comments. Randy, is it okay if we reach out to you after this show has aired with additional questions that people may have?
Sure.
Fantastic. And thank you so much for being here. I think we need to have you back.
Well, I know that we're going to have him back because out of this discussion, there have been at least 3 different shows that I think that you need to speak to for our viewers. And I'm going to say thank you to our viewers. When we started promoting this show, the interest of what we're going to talk about was already there. So now you've already laid the groundwork, Randy, for us to bring you back. And I'm going to talk to you offline to see how we can, carry this conversation even further. Because I know that it needs to do that. But before you go though, I'm sorry. Look, we get ready to go. Then we come back. I have a question for you, and it's kind of personal because I am a single Black man. I don't have a huge family. Most of my brother, I only have 1 sister out of 6 siblings that's alive. My mother and father are both deceased. And I was never taught about generational wealth until later. And I learned that through the family that I've created amongst myself. So now I have somewhat of a tiny legacy that I can leave. I'm not sure how to go about leaving that legacy, if that makes any sense to you. I'll
send you my social right after this show.
Honey.
And I'm very serious about that because, I've learned these things along the way. Even the points that you talked about today, Randy, I learned at a very late age. I'm glad to be where I am. And I've some of the suggestions that you made, I've adapted to my life. There's some people on here who talked about stocks. They've introduced me to that. I'm pretty good. But now I'm like this. Well, who do I leave this to?
Good question.
True.
And I'm in a place, and I don't know if that, I don't know. That is a very honest question coming from me. I really don't know. And if that's something that you want to call me about, or I have to pay for your services, then I will do it. But that is, I know there are other, if I'm in this situation, there are other people in this situation as well. And so that's the only reason why I want to raise it and bring it to the forefront.
So I'll quickly say, one of the main reasons that I became an advisor is because I truly believe that we are here for the benefit of others. Otherwise, I don't know why we're here, not just to work and leave this place and not leave our mark. And so I typically have a conversation when a person in your situation, Alvin, I say, Alvin, what do you believe in? When somebody says your name, what do you want it to mean? And you'll describe that, and we'll align that with what you truly believe and the difference in the impact you want to make in someone else's life. You may not have family members and things like that. One of the things I specialize in is legacy banks and family banks. What if the Alvin Scholarship Fund, for when you went to your family reunion, they were able to fund an education scholarship based on what you did today, even though you didn't have parents and so left over, but you do have people with the last name King that will remember your name if we do it the right way. And so really I would say, Alvin, what do you want your name to mean when somebody says it? And then we'll find and draw a plan that makes that happen.
Wow. That's gave me chills. You should, yeah, that's indeed.
Randy, thank you. Thank you. That question has been on my heart for a long time.
We'll have a conversation.
And so I would love to have a conversation with you about that, but thank you very much. That was well received. Thank you.
Randy, I have a question. COVID and this pandemic has really impacted a lot of people. People have had to dip into their savings. You kind of touched on this, but what can people do now as they are either A, starting to go back to work or still dipping into their savings to still really prepare for when things change?
I know I say it over and over again. Cash flow is the foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Set up a spending plan and see what you've been spending. If people had to pull back, I would say just because that things are freeing up and just because we're able to go back to work or our income is able to increase again, don't change. The problem with life is that life expands. And here's what people typically want to do. They want to spend and save what's left. There's typically nothing left. What you have to do is save and spend what's left. So a good spending plan would help you, especially if we're coming out of COVID. Let me sit down, because people would typically during COVID, get in, 3 months worth of driving to a gallon of gas, and you're spending $3,000 in groceries, So how do we come out? How do we set a plan saying that moving forward, we learn that we could do more with less? And how do we continue to do that? I'm not saying that you should live in a restrictive lifestyle. Live in an abundant lifestyle. Know that you have an opportunity to make a change going forward. So I would say start with a spending plan and see how you can, work on sticking with that. And don't try to work for perfection. Just try to work for progress.
Yeah, because even 10 cents saved is better than 10 cents spent if you're in this situation.
Exactly.
You got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, Randy, first, everybody I see the comments, bring Randy back, bring Randy back. So I'm going to talk to you because you have to come back. And I just want to say thank you for doing this show tonight. It has been more than I expected. And you have given a lot of tools, and you have said a lot of things that takeaways that people can go back and give thought to. And if you all want to reach Randy, go to www.mrrandyjones.com. Okay, that's so easy. mrrandyjones.com. And you can get in touch with him directly and tell them that you're from the He Said show and that you heard him. Introduce yourselves or whatever you have to do. But I'm sure you heard something today that can help you in the future. And Randy, again, thank you so much for being here today. Really appreciate you, man.
Not a problem. If you guys bring me back, I'll blow your mind with some other stuff, especially with investments.
Well, on. Because many of our questions have people been asking investment-specific types of questions. Mm-hmm. So I would love to have you back on to talk about that specifically.
Hey, I welcome it.
Mm-hmm. Right on. And great. David Benjamin asked, one, if we could bring you back, but two, he wants this show on repeat. And I just want to make sure that everybody who's watching, if you found value in this, please share this with your friends. You can watch us on Facebook at He Said Live, under Black Press USA Live videos, which is a link on our Facebook page. You can listen to us on podcasts. There's all kinds of ways that you can share this information because it's important, and we need to think differently about money. We need to think differently about money as Black people. And I think, Randy, thank you so much again for all your time and energy.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Randy. This was great.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care. Well, guys, if that wasn't like one of the most informative shows that we've ever had this whole season, I don't know what to say. And we've had some informative shows, but that show really touched me. And it has actually, again, gave me some validation because I've been doing some of the things that Randy has talked about tonight. Because, again, I had to learn because I wasn't taught that. I didn't come from a family or a situation where someone said, Alvin, this is how you should spend your money. This is what you need to do. So he has really enlightened me. So great show.
Fantastic.
Great show.
Yeah.
Great show. Well, it's time for Black Excellence, everybody, this week. And I am actually going to be the person who is going to share my honoree for Black Excellence. And let me just kind of warn you guys, this is coming from a very heartfelt place. I just want to let you guys know because I live in truth and I'm sharing this Black Excellence because I am who I am because of this individual who I'm about to talk about. Tonight, I'm honoring someone that you won't find on the internet. She's not someone who's welcomed a lot of praise in her life while she was here on earth. She didn't even like taking pictures. She loved and protected her 6 children, whether they were right or wrong. She worked one job for the 25 years that I knew of her to work, to ensure that her children were fed, groomed, dressed, and had a roof over their heads until they could obtain their own. Tonight, I am honoring my late mother, Margaret V. King. On January 28th, 1987, that was 34 years ago this year, I lost the strongest and most significant human being of my life. She was born July 7th, 1925. She was a twin, and if she was alive today, she would be 96 old this year. I was one of 6 children, of 5 boys and 1 girl. I was next to the baby. She was my best friend and the first person that showed me how to live my life unapologetically, even when I didn't even know what that meant. Now, as a child, I couldn't understand some of the decisions that she made for my life, and I've even spoken publicly about her choices for young me and my life, particularly in not signing the papers for me to attend the historic Duke Ellington School for the Performing Arts in Washington, D.C. That was actually a very therapeutic moment of my life when she didn't do that. But I want to tell you about this extraordinary Black woman, because when we do this segment, we always talk about people who have just like conquered the world. They're in the history books, and you know they've done these amazing things. But this was a real human being. She worked as a manager, as I said, for 25 years at a place called Dickey's Cleaners. That was in my neighborhood where I grew up in Washington, D.C. It was a Black-owned cleaning business in the Northwest section of D.C. She was a supervisor there. During my elementary school days, I was a block away from where she worked, and every Friday, I would go to have lunch with her. Now, I'm not going to tell you all because I know some of my family members are looking at this, but I was her favorite. Her staff, and they know this to be true. Her staff adored her. I watched how professional she was and how her employees respected her. I wanted that for me at a young age of like 8 or 7 or 8. Few people knew, though, that my mother was a functioning alcoholic. She raised all 6 of her children in a 1-bedroom apartment. She was married to my father, who was violently and verbally abusive to her from the time that I was born until I was 11 years old, when she found a way to get a divorce and get out of that situation. Growing up for me, despite the chaos that was going on in my house and watching my mother being abused and struggling with her addiction to alcohol, she never allowed our in-house experience to filter outside. She was a strict disciplinarian on me. I could not go outside on Saturday unless I cleaned the house. How many children are doing that right now? I literally had to clean the house, and she inspected it before I could go outside and play. Wow. Hence my cleaning skills today. If you've ever come to my house, everyone knows that I love to clean. I blame that on her. I had to come home and do my homework after school, and she had to see it before I could go outside. But when I got to junior high school and through high school, I started noticing that I was different. I didn't know how to explain it. When I look back, I remember my mother encouraging me to do the things at school that I asked her, could I do, like acting, dancing, singing, gymnastics. Although extremely supportive, she never attended one of the events for the exception of each of my graduations. She would tell me to do it for me. Never tried to impress other people for something I was passionate about. As an adult, I never knew how those words would come to shape my life today. My mother had a quick wit, and as people in the gay world would say, your mother can read. And she could. My last year in high school in 1977, I wanted to tell my mother that I was gay. I made several attempts, and she kept avoiding me until one day she said, I told her I have to tell you something. And she said, if it's about you being gay, I'd rather you be gay than out there robbing a bank. Now let's go shopping. My mother became a recovering alcoholic in 1977 until the day she died in 1987. In 1983, she encouraged me to produce my first self-produced fashion show called Something Special. She told me you were going to do great things and with this and never doubt yourself. From that show, King and I Productions was born, and I went on to work and become respected in the fashion industry nationally and internationally for over 30 years. Although she's gone, my mother lives in me and everything that I do. For those of you that still have your mother alive, please do not allow a day to pass without letting your mother know that you love her and you love her for giving you life, because you are who you are because of who she is. Thank you for allowing me to share this piece for my Black excellence. Thank you very much.
That was beautiful.
I appreciate it.
Beautiful.
Amazing.
Thank you, guys. Wow, that was tough. When I was writing that, I actually kind of teared up because, I'm sharing, a part of me that I don't share, all the time. And, but we live in a real world where real things happen. I didn't come from a silver spoon. I never pretended to. I've never, did any of those things. And again, I am who I am because that Black, hard-working, beat-down woman looked at me and said, "I'm there for you."
Yeah.
And so I just respect her. So thank you all. And my sister is on here crying. Stop doing that. Don't be putting these little emojis up here about you crying, because I'm not trying to hear that. Stop it. Stop
She
it.
also had something to say when you said that you were her favorite. And what she said was, lies.
Lies.
Oh, what a great night for your sister to be on to hear about
I am not, you know what, I heard her, but I didn't hear. So I'm going to go ahead. Ladies and gentlemen, we are nearing the end of the show. And I wanted to say thank you again for joining us tonight. I want to give a special thanks to my co-host, Vash Bodhi, and Saladin Deir. Thank you for joining us tonight. And it was really, really good to have you here. So hopefully you will come back, at some point and be with us again, because we really want to see you. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, Mother's Day is this Sunday, but in honor of Mother's Day and the week of Mother's Day, our May 14th show, we are having a show called A Family Affair. And for those of you who know her, Silver Logan Sharp, R&B singer, vocalist, used to sing with Chic, and actually she has her own solo project. Her husband, Daryl, the two of them are a force. Silver is going to be here with her mother, Paula Potts, and who is an author and a motivational speaker. And we're going to talk about a family affair. How do you conduct that type of business in the industry? And believe me, when you see these two together, it is like fire, because her and her mother, I love them, but to see how they work and the advice that they can give to some of us and some people who are in this industry trying to do it with your family, it will just blow your mind. So here we go.
Nice.
Word of the week. And the words of the week for this week, thanks to Randy inspiring us, is financial fitness is not a pipe dream or a state of mind. It's a reality if you are willing to pursue it and embrace it. And that was by Will Robinson. Thank you for that. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a great night. And I thank you. Yes, Carl, I love you, sweetheart. She's just going, my sister's just going crazy. She's never been on here before, so she's just like sending all this stuff. So I love her. But thank you guys for joining us. And until we meet again on He Said.
He said.
He said.
That's right. We will see you guys next week. Thank you for joining, and you all have a great week. Happy Mother's Day to all of the mothers, and we look forward to seeing you guys next week. Thank you, Mom. I love you, girl. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you.